In live cast. Today's episode one, is Lead Through the Fog, Clarity in a Time of Chaos. I'm Marc Wolfe, and I'm an author, executive coach, and corporate advisor. And I'm here with two of my buddies that are professionals in industries that you may know them from, but you're also going to find out more. Dave, tell us a little about you.
So I'm the personal valet to my wife anytime she says to carry stuff. Aside from that, I've been helping people in the learning, development, and technology space for the last, I don't know if I want to admit it, how many years, but it's been a long time, even though I look like I'm 20. And my job every day, Mark, is helping people get high performing teams to be able to work well together to achieve results together. That's what I do.
Thanks, Dave. Wally?
Hey, Mark. Hey, Dave. It's great to be with you guys. Yeah, I'm proud. I'm the old guy sitting at the table here, but that's fine. Many years, and folks on the call would know me from the auto space, maybe some from not automotive, but my passion is people. My passion is problem solving. And I'm typically focused on how can I help? I mean, I look at opportunities and try to bring solutions to the table. And I just love people. I love people and I love chaos. I'm not afraid of it. I like it.
Well, that's great because today we're going to talk about leading through the chaos. And some of this chaos is predictable. Like we know things are going to happen because they're cyclical. And then there's things that come out of left field. So just while we kick it off with some of the things that we know that people are struggling with or have issues with, or even that have been solved, but that we keep having this reoccurring.
Yeah, Mark, it's interesting. In the world we live in, chaos is really a constant. Change is a constant. And we get a chance every day to get up with a great attitude or a bad attitude. And how do we approach it? Do we run to it like we run to a fire, or do we run from it? And sometimes you should run from it, and sometimes you should run to it. And in today's world, whether it's in a personal side or in a professional side, or just relationships, which cross both boundaries, leaning into those relationships helps you get through these things, right? Hearing clarity and understanding truth of what's going on around you, exploring a little bit on your own. Don't take everything you read as gospel truth. Is helpful. Helps you kind of go through that chaos.
That's great. That's great. So, like, let's kick it off with is there a way to work through chaos in a way where we can make it worse or better, right, by what we do?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's a couple of things we want to cover today. I think and as we've kind of played with this topic, I think definitely when we think about clarity, and that was the title of this session. We've got a couple more sessions and we'll talk about those at the end. But clarity, is the antidote and helping people understand. That doesn't mean have transparency 24/7 to everything, because sometimes information is too soon. How do you lead with confident truth? So whether you're the leader, and even if you're in middle management and you're getting some of it and passing it along, all those things, it's even when it's uncomfortable, is helpful. Cutting through the noise. Sometimes cutting through the noise, you've got to set priorities even in the storm. We wouldn't recommend you set 50, but simple, achievable priorities helps people to kind of focus. And then operations, and most folks on this call would know me from an operations perspective, structure, storytelling. We have a tendency to do everything in PowerPoints, the death of 1,000 cuts. Storytelling is significantly better, as I'm making Dave laugh. And measurement, and most on this call would know, for me, what gets measured gets done. I'm a measure 3 times, cut once kind of guy. And those things bring calm.
I'm waiting for Patrick Lencioni to write a book called Death by PowerPoint, right? He wrote Death by Meeting, right? And I think the next one ought to be Death by PowerPoint. I think what Wally's saying is so true, Mark. When you talk about clarity, I think about, one of my favorite books is the book Radical Candor, right? Mm-hmm. And it's how do we get to the place where we can care enough about our team to be transparent and to be candid, right? And during times of turmoil, it becomes ultra important that we not waste time on, I call it artificial harmony, right? Artificial harmony doesn't help us create what Wally's describing. And if we can't shake artificial harmony and instead go, Mark, why'd you wear a blue shirt today? Today wouldn't have been a day to pick a blue shirt. Why did you wear the blue shirt? Right. By the way, everybody, Mark he looks great in his blue shirt. But if we can't break artificial harmony and go, okay, what are we going to do? And how do we talk to each other? And how do we gain that clarity through communication? Then I think we get in trouble.
So if we do that, there's a reason why people posture. There's a reason why people don't want to be seen as not knowing the answers. There's a reason that each one of these behaviors happens because of not only biases, but we could have a much longer conversation about this and what some of the major issues are. But it's like, we were talking about how chaos is sometimes created because of things that we do and we put ourselves in a cycle. When you talk about radical candor, like I'm from New Jersey, so I don't understand how people wouldn't be candid. Like if you see something, you say something. And then as I was just interviewed recently, somebody said, you people from New Jersey, you think opinions are facts. And I was like, okay, so what's the problem with that? Right. So I think there's people, especially when you're working in a global organization.
We froze.
Well, let's keep going. Mark will rejoin us any second, I'm sure.
Mark froze. I don't know how
Um,
kind
yeah,
of
well, this is the cool thing about going live, right? And technology interferes with live. Um, I think what Mark said is true, though, and you could change it from New Jersey to Chicago people. You could change it to Detroit people. There are some things that impact people's ability to speak comfortably that are cultural. Wally, you and I have also seen that cultural speak candidly can happen inside businesses, right? Some businesses, there's people on this call that go, yeah, I don't know that my company embraces me saying the emperor has no clothes on, right? And there's other companies that go, bring it on, right? Ray Dalio said, let's have healthy conflict and bring on I disagree with you. The emperor's got no clothes on. What have you seen?
It's interesting that you say that. And having worked in two large automotive companies, really different for a lot of different reasons. But to your point, in all of the variety of the companies we all work in and in the experiences we have, you run into that. And I think as individuals, we measure for a moment and say, is it a safe place to step out? Can I step out and do that? Right. So I certainly experienced working for one of my more recent automotive companies. There was a lot of desire to say what needed to be said, but then there were repercussions for doing that. Sometimes public, sometimes private, and even sometimes public with a purpose to get the organization to move. So sometimes it depends on where you're at in an organization, what you're seeing. I would always caution people in the moment of chaos when things are even heated. Sometimes that's healthy. Sometimes it is a learning experience, just like when we're raising children or other things. We learn and grow the most through experiences. When things are super perfect and calm, we kind of relax as human beings. Chaos, actually, and that's one of the reasons I like chaos, is it's good emery cloth. It makes me a better person every day.
Mark, welcome back. We kept going. We took your New Jersey and added Chicago and a couple other places.
Oh, he's on mute. We can't hear you, Mark. Technology. We can't hear you. We'll see if he can come back.
Yeah.
He's, he's going to have to play. That's okay. That is part of this. That's part of the chaos in the middle of the fog.
Wally, tell us a little bit about what you meant when you said storytelling, because I think it's new to me since you shared it with me and might be new to our audience.
Yeah, storytelling, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I knew storytelling early in my career. I probably saw it quite a bit, and I just viewed it as great leaders who really spoke well, right? But I think over time in my career, again, dying the death of a thousand cuts of how many times did we need to plan for a meeting, to plan for a meeting, to do a meeting, to post plan for a meeting, and then regurgitate what we heard. And it's all in the same set of PowerPoints cut 100 ways. Storytelling creates memory. Storytelling takes the facts and the transparency and it seeds it into a conversation where sometimes, again, you go to a meeting and there's 100, I mean, literally 100 PowerPoint charts that you're going to go through in 2 hours. Can you remember all that? Can you go back and reference all that? Yes, you can. I mean, those of us that have done it, and everybody on this call, I'm sure, is very good at it. But at the same time, does it seed in? Does it mean something? And I think in storytelling, and it takes practice to storytell. It's like, what are we trying? What message are we trying to get across? But I will say, storytelling seeds in the topic. It creates more memory for what you're trying to get across versus just a blast of facts. What you do in
Yeah.
PowerPoint quite often.
I think I don't know about the rest of the folks listening, but I think I'm learning from you as you say this because having come from leading executive workshops and leadership programs most of my career, right? Um, I use story a lot in a learning environment. I'm really comfortable creating a story that helps. I'm really comfortable. I learned from John Maxwell that when I hear stuff, I write it down in a little notebook I carry so that later when I need a story about something in a training environment, I can craft it. I
Mhm.
don't use it as well. I really don't think I use it at all in chaos or when there's business difficulty. And I'm just curious, what kind of reaction have you gotten from your peers or your superiors during those times where you said, "Wait, let me just help you with this with a story"?
It's interesting. And I think just to your final kind of question there of how did the peers or the leadership perceive it? I think if, at least for me personally, I don't start off and say, I'm going to tell you a story. Because in typically heated moments, that's like, wait a minute, let's just get to the facts. Kind of to Mark's point from being from New Jersey, it's like, I'm going to tell you my opinion, it's a fact, and I'm going to honk my horn at you. At the same time, weaving in additional information in a story, companies are all pushed and pressured to deliver month over month results, quarter over quarter, all kinds of things, revenue, risk management, all the different metrics we all know, KPIs, and playing with those and weaving them more into a story and pointing to things that are happening and putting on the table additional insights. And that's one thing I like about storytelling. Storytelling gives you an opportunity, even in a 2 minute elevator or a 1 minute elevator kind of speech, to weave in a broader set of perspective and context. And so I like it that way, Dave. I lean into storytelling as trying to add clarity to the context. And again, I think about the chaos. And depending upon where you sit in an organization, you'd love for the top of the company, the chairman, to tell you everything. Well, you lose a lot of strategic advantage of expelling every piece of information. But at the same time, to get your team, and we'll talk about it in our next series, how do you build confidence in the team going through this? You have to give them enough to bring them along. They need to stay in the boat, rowing and doing their role, asking good questions and challenging. And so it's that leadership balance of knowing what you share, when you share it, how you share it. And I do think visibility and continuity, and we talk about, really certainly connecting to people is
Yeah.
super important to be able to be connected.
Speaking of our connector from New Jersey, I think he's back with us.
Oh, let's see. Nope, not a
No
word.
microphone.
I think he's out. I think he's just going to have to text what he wants to say to us. That's okay. Again, I think this is a good example of chaos, right? I mean, we live in a world of
Yeah.
technology, and all of us live on Zooms and Microsoft Teams and all great technologies to use. I also think even ChatGPT, today, if and Dave, you know this, I guess I would ask you the question: how much people use that, and how do you see it helping them in this scenario of helping kind of go through the fog and deal with chaos? You're way more advanced in that world than I am. How do
Look,
you that?
I went to a meeting. I want to say it was at least a year ago, may have been 14 months ago. A really great guy named Chris Johnson here in Arizona who led an incredible marketing and advertising agency, but super technology driven, came and gave a talk about how we can all in our businesses, he didn't say gain clarity, but what I took away was I could gain a lot of clarity by learning to use Chat GPT. And the best advice he gave is go have fun first, go fool around. And to your question, Wally, today I am a 61-year-old guy who probably uses it more than most 61-year-old guys. And I do it because I talk to it. I give it very clear directions. And I use 3 or 4 different models because I've learned where my clarity helps the model tell me things that I want to know. And so from that process, what I've learned is that I gain a lot of clarity when I'm able to talk to it, gain answers, and help me move forward with new ideas. This
Okay,
morning,
let's see
I
if that
was
helps.
creating SLAs for a new agreement, which was really helpful. And I think that we all have to find our comfort zone with talking to AI as if we were talking to each other. I said, hey, I needed to do that, but I wanted to do this. And can you go back and integrate? And that's what makes the difference. Mark, I know you're back with us now.
I know it's scary.
I
Yeah,
know.
I was talking to AI while you were busy doing that.
Trying
Actually,
to figure
I
it
was
out.
just having no, just kidding.
You were
It's
giving New Jersey clarity to the software.
you see, don't mention things about Jersey on a podcast because things don't go well. Because somebody knows a guy and they actually cut me off. So just saying, it still has that thing. You guys are right. It's like, but to be clear, a lot of people want to say things, but they don't, right?
Yeah.
And what you have to have is leadership from the top that allows those dialogues to happen. And you have to have this ability, like Radical Candor says, or even when you're talking about stories, it becomes part of the culture. Because if you're not doing that and you're the only one doing that, you're going to feel like an outlier and not in a good way. Now, somebody's got to be able to wrangle this change, right, Dave? I know you're not afraid to come in and rattle things up because the outcomes that happen because of this are what people really need to see. So they're like, yeah, I don't like the way you did it, but I like that it worked this way. And maybe this is a way to do things. You mean like storytelling? I mean, like the way that history ever started with storytelling, or having conversations with people to talk about, I don't know the answers to what's going on, but here's what we're going to try and we're going to adjust accordingly. Right. And the reason I wrote a book called Yeah, But is because there's so many people that have said, yeah, but, right. And we do that constantly. So I think about it and I'm thinking, as you guys are talking this through, what I think people really need to hear is just like, you're going to do things and you don't always get permission to do it. Right. And maybe depending on your personality, you'll do things and ask for forgiveness later. But sometimes you can bring people along and go, tell me what you really want me to accomplish. Right. We're not clear on what the next steps are, but can we at least know that here's what I'm going to do? Here's the plan that I know it is. And if it fails, we can adjust accordingly. But if you don't want to take any risk, what industry are you going to be in if you don't want to take any risks at all? I mean, seriously, name one, right? Even the government takes risk, right? Even in education are taking risks now, right? And again, not even being political. If we don't take risk, we don't evolve and grow and come up with new ideas.
Yeah, I think it's the same even if you talk about healthcare, right? Let's try this medicine. Let's do this. Let's disagree with a course of treatment and talk about what could be a different course. I think that makes sense, Mark.
So Wally, as it's not just about the auto industry. It could be any industry. But relate some of the things that you've seen have been chaotic, right? or no one could figure out, but someone, maybe someone unlikely, came up with a solution and they were like, wow, I can't believe we had this internally. Or I didn't see this was going to be done. Or maybe you even have been involved in some projects where you're like, hey, I've helped people see things, but we went back to the fundamentals, right? It wasn't always something new.
Yeah, I can give you an interesting example in my background. And it does touch on automotive, but it doesn't necessarily have to be automotive because I'll talk about quality. When you think about quality, so that's can be in pharma, that can be in automotive, that can be in anything that we deliver, whether it's a service or a hard product. I happened to be in an environment at one point where a particular product was affected by regulatory change that happened on a regular basis, seasonal regulatory change, had to do with fuel. Had to do with fuel. And manufacturing in the auto world thinks they've dialed everything in and they do a really good job. I mean, I'm a big believer in, again, measure three times, cut once. Um, and where I want to go with this from a storytelling and also a listening. And for those that are on this call that are in top leadership, or even as you're talking about people that want to press into the leadership above them in the right way, right? Step out, take a little risk. A lot of times, storytelling helps you bring things to the table. And in this particular example, it was simply that I was attending on a regular basis a voice of the market kind of set of meetings with service directors. And they kept bringing up this same problem over and over and over on a highly valued asset in a particular brand that I worked for. It was worth billions of dollars, actually a couple of billion. And we needed to save the reputation of the brand. And it was being affected by fuel changes on a seasonal basis. And it came down to a simple thing of what they were seeing, and we started listening to, because to your point, Mark, they had the courage to say to me, the head person over this area, we need you to pay attention to what we're doing. So then we got people in the room, we brought powertrain at that point involved and said, we're going to run some tests. We're not going to just do the simple step one, step two. We're going to jump to step 14, kind of almost to where Dave was talking about a minute ago. Let's circumvent some steps. Let's make this a big enough problem. And in the end, it was as simple as the injector on the diesel engine did not have the circumference, was not broad enough to deal with fuel changes as microscopic as they were from season to season. And so the engine stumbled. Well, you have the ability to ruin a reputation of a really powerful brand, a really powerful engine, because it struggled to deliver the experience the consumer wanted. So number one, listening to the end consumer is critically important. And I would encourage everybody on this call, wherever you're at, whatever organization you're in, I don't care whether it's in a religious organization, whether it's in your family, or whether it's in the workplace, bringing in information and listening to those that are the most affected is super important. Doesn't mean they have the answer. Just try to understand what the pain is. And then you challenge the process of going at it, right? And again, the transparency, to your point, Mark, of we're going to take this step. It may not work. We're going to try it. And we're going to work our way through it. And quickly, by the time we were done with about a 6-month set of work, we took what we should have known many, many months ahead. But you can't study and perfect for everything until it gets into the real marketplace. And we had to pause and do that. And we spent a few $100 million, which sounds like a lot to those folks on the phone, but in the auto world, that's not a lot. But we salvaged the reputation of a $2 billion diesel brand. That's worth a lot. And it's because we listened more than we just predictively chose and made decisions, right? And it took people courage to storytell, to use real life examples, and it even took courage for my staff and others to listen, because you're going up water, you're going upstream against things that are measured. How could it be wrong? No, it's not wrong. Well, wait a minute. It factually is wrong. Get closer to the problem and you will see that it's affecting the end consumer. Again, just an example.
Right.
You know, but you can apply that.
You bring up a point that there's half or 3/4 of the audience that is thinking about right now, right? Which is something that three of us talked about in the last couple of weeks, which is, look, I mean, I've been a technology company founder, And when we didn't listen well enough about why the content wasn't being consumed the way we thought it would, right? We got in trouble and it was expensive problem. And for all of us, whether it's why isn't my teenager able to do the things I want? Is there a challenge with I'm not listening to what motivates them, what they care about? Is it my spouse? Is it how do I listen to my boss better? Or if I'm the boss, how do I listen better? Right. So that I can take it in without it coming across wrong. Right. How do I do that is what lots of us try and figure out all the time.
But there's, as you guys bring this together, right? So somebody has to have the courage. Engineers are going to look at things and go, it can't be possibly wrong. You're like, but here's the results. Here's what's going on. And then, Dave, as you're talking about communicating it, but, within all this, there's this behavioral way where certain people communicate different ways, right?
Yes.
And it's really interesting. The sooner you know how people communicate or don't, the easier it is to have these conversations. But I see so many organizations that literally are like, hey, this is a really good person that came from this really good company. They're going to fit great. And one of the things I learned early is adding a person to a team or taking away a person from a team creates an absolutely brand new team. So hold on. Can there be chaos within communication styles and and just dialogue and cultural backgrounds? I mean, Dave, does this play any role in all this stuff?
Look, there's three people on here and a bunch in this audience is my guess that share a passion for how can I use some data that helps me understand how people communicate so that when I integrate them into a team, I have an advantage of build that team faster and smoother and work better. And look, it doesn't matter whose data you use, but you got to use data to understand people so that you can come back to that central theme, Mark, which is one new person changes the dynamic. One new person causes a ripple in the pond. And sometimes that ripple delays solving the $100 million problem for too long and it hurts the brand. And that doesn't matter if it's a technology company, an automotive company, an insurance company. It doesn't matter. It matters that if you don't bring tools to this process of create some clarity, create good communication, you're not going to do it. The three of us have a favorite tool that brought us together by accident. But look, bottom line is leaders need the data in order to create the structure, create the measurement around what Wally's saying, which is bring people together so that you can solve problems as a group.
Yeah, that's great. I just think we are an additive and we're an additive country, right? So, and as people, Americans love to add. And there was this one test where it was like a Lego problem. And they were like, how do we make this stand up correctly? And the answer, which very few people found out, was taking one brick away, not adding another brick. Right. And the thing is that we like to add things to it. So we're like, hey, we just need more of this. And if you want to use Microsoft Office, which many people are familiar with, there's so many tools that people do not use. And it can do so many things because they like, if we just add one more tool, I was like, that's bloated software. That so many things, 95% of the tools you don't use in it. So could this, Wally and Dave, could there be some fundamental understanding of how to work through things that we're so missed because we're such a hypersensitive, hyper like aware, all about information but not wisdom? How does that play into all this chaos, which is doing more and not actually remembering what we should start doing more as a basis?
Yeah, Dave, I'll get Dave to weigh in. Let me take a first shot at this because I think as we look at this, one, it's forgetting to try to stay simple, right? Again, to your point, as human beings, we want to be additive. Number two, you know, clarity and transparency at an ongoing way, whether you're being transparent up or being transparent down, or you're working with family, kids, whatever. Doing that in a way helps bring calm, right? I talk about operational things, right? Structured, calm. We're going to hand out at the end of this, or it's available for the download, as the focus in the fog framework, because I do think some organizational things, just a little bit like we talked earlier, ChatGPT or other devices or other platforms, can help push the boat off the dock. You still have to refine it, and you have to be okay with it, and you have to test it, right? You have to play with it, because it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to bat 1,000. You're probably going to bat 193 is probably my batting average, and my golfing score is even worse, right? But at the end of the day, if I don't try, I'm not going to move. And so I think the openness, the willingness to talk and to listen, I do think it's interesting. And Dave, as you weigh in on this, it's like we don't, as leaders in all different levels, different roles we have, we don't always even have the answers. How do we maintain clarity for those that work with us in the middle of chaotic problems? How do we help them stay focused when we don't even have all of that? We don't know what's around the turn.
Yeah. I'm blessed to have been a CEO and a president of a couple of companies, and I have a saying that helps me, so I'll just share it, right? And when I feel that additive overload that Mark describes, I tell myself it's time to narrow my focus. And when I remind myself that it's okay that the clutter is there, or that there's all these tools and all these things, but at some point I know I have to narrow my focus, which is my way of saying, okay, let's go get clarity, right? Go get clear on what's the problem, get clear on who are the people that can contribute to the solution, get clear on what's the framework to empower that group in order to go work on the solution well, and be really clear on when and what I need for outcomes, right? So that they know timeline, and so that they know here's the problem we have, and here's what I need future state answers for, right? And so as I narrow my focus, it helps me a great deal to get to that place so that I can get more things done, to your question, Wally.
Yeah, I have a tendency to try to, you see a long range, you see vision. I have to remind myself at times, you can't eat the elephant while it's running. You got to break this thing down, and I'm as guilty as anybody of trying to eat the elephant while it's running, because I'll be weeks and months and days ahead, and I have to back up and get the team to the same place, and be patient with that. I do want to say something for the group. So I noticed that there are very few comments. Please weigh in. I mean, if there's questions or you have a different perspective on things we're chatting about here, throw it at us. Because at the end of the day, we all learn through this kind of communication. And I can tell you the three of us like that.
I
So
don't know about you guys, but I got a couple of messages that came in that I'd share with us, right? Couple of folks are on LinkedIn and say that they can't see us or hear us. So, curious thought, talking about how technology might be throwing gremlins our way today. Two really good friends of several of us here, all of us, sending messages going, "Where are you guys?" So we hope that most of you are there. Mark, any thoughts?
you know what? It'll be recorded. So the beautiful thing is you don't have to watch it live, and it is streaming on YouTube as well. So we will be able to have it. So the beauty of things is it doesn't always have to be in real time. But as we kind of land the plane and let's talk about this focus in the fog framework real quick, and talk about like what our next one is, our next session is going to be.
Yeah. At least let me call out the fact that, and so apologize for those that are struggling on LinkedIn. Again, the technology side, I think we're on 3 platforms at the moment: LinkedIn and Facebook, and I think you said
YouTube.
YouTube. We are going to do another session that kind of builds on this. I think that's where the three of us wanted to go. People first, focusing on guiding teams, into action with some confidence in uncertain times, because it builds from the framework that we're talking about. Kind of focus in the fog, and how do you do that? And because all of those things we talked about early on about confident truth, even when it's uncomfortable, the noise and how you cut through it, all those things are important to build on. So it is a building kind of platform. So I want to make sure we do that. We're going to do that, I think, on June 25th, same time. I think if we're having trouble on LinkedIn, we should have that fixed by then. We're three guys. We're old, but we'll figure it out between now and then if there's a problem on the LinkedIn piece, and we certainly will send out the recorded session.
Yeah, and the focus on the framework, right? So what we want to do is make sure we leave people with something that kind of goes beyond just the conversation. It's like, okay, well, what can I do to act on this? How do I bring this to other people? And the interesting part about not hearing us is that it's the mystery of working through problems, right?
Yep.
You keep going, right? This is a small problem, not for a $2 billion company, right? The thing is that you're going to come up with uncertainty. So you can stop, you can freak out, you can be angry, you can be embarrassed. Great. These are all emotions. That's okay. But what you can do is also learn how to adjust and work through it. You can go and be like, here's how we're going to do that. Right. So I look at everything that happens that's not always simple. And I'm like, okay, well, what did we learn from that experience? What do we need to do next? And the problem is that if you never experience failures and you never experience things that don't go your way, what are you really learning anyhow? Right? I mean, that's what you talked about at the top of this was chaos helps you be a better human.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like if you're not doing those things, I first want to do the breath test to see if you're breathing, because learning through experience, and I find that I will say this again, I'm probably the oldest person, maybe not listening, but certainly the oldest of the three of us. I, I hate the fact that I waited till late in life to be able to reflect what's happened provincially in my life and to try to learn from it. And you learn things, and sometimes you don't even know why you're learning it. You don't know it in the moment because you're in the forest. Most of the folks I think that are on this call are probably overachievers because we're very driven people. Um, and we like to converse about some of this kind of stuff because it's a chance to learn, and everybody's input is important because it just makes this better. And again, I really believe in the emery cloth kind of piece of life. I mean, that's the way I was raised. Measure three times, cut once, and failure is how things achieve. Again, some people won't like an Elon Musk story, but at the end of the day, he doesn't do what he doesn't do without failure. And I'll disagree with him, and I will agree with him on many, many things. But I love the fact that he embraces failure, because that's why he reaches so far, is he embraces failure to learn from.
Couldn't agree more. I still think the things that allow me to take care of people and teams the best come from the things that I learned the hard way or didn't like in the way I was led. So, yeah, the ability to take those and turn them to the positive is the resilience that we all got to have if we're going to accomplish great things.
Guys, it's great to have these discussions. And I knew, as we kind of wrap this up, and everybody will be able to get their restream, we'll put it back on here because I'm seeing the notes too about the technology glitch. I knew this was uncomfortable, for Wally's like, hey, I really haven't done this before. And the beauty of this, and I know Dave, you have, and I'm not afraid to fail forward and publicly because again, I guess it's that Jersey thing. You don't really even realize you're failing forward. You're just like, well, I was just being me, right? It's interesting to go, and thank you, Wally, for taking this kind of risk, so to speak, to be like, okay, I'm going to be out here. And then Dave, I know you do recordings often and you're not afraid to stand up and have conversations, but hopefully as we each learn, just maybe trying something new, right? Maybe just stepping out of the box and doing something, maybe being there. And if you think what's the worst that happens, I mean, you're not going to get fired, right, from this, right, Wally? I mean, people aren't going to not hire you because there was a glitch on LinkedIn. And if they are, really, are those the people you wanted as clients anyhow because they wanted something that was perfect, right? It's 2025, right? We realized through COVID and everything else that people are more real, right? Their cat's going to walk across their keyboard. I mean, there's people that work. It, if we don't understand that they're behind what we do are actually people that work for a reason, that's not just to support their organization, but they're people that care about other things and they do this for a different reason, that this is part of their life, not their whole life. Like that's where I want to get, right? That's the clarity and the chaos of what do I do this for? And the more you understand yourself and why you do it, the easier you can start being you, right? Like, and just leaning into it. Any final thoughts,
I
guys?
agree. I agree. Just in final thoughts, I appreciate being included in the group because I have a lot of respect for both of you guys and have been friends with Dave for many, many years. Mark and I have known each other for a few years. But as I said just a few minutes ago, it is, I'm as passionate or more passionate today about repaying, paying forward, paying back, whatever you want to call it, um, kind of the years of experience. And I do think, I still have mentors, even at my point in life, believe it or not. I have people that I reach out to that are 5 and 10 years ahead of me in things that I listen to that help me. They provoke the thought, right? Help me fail forward, right? Those kind of things. So I think this is a great experience, a great opportunity, and I really like this series we're doing because again, it's the three of us getting a chance just to share. And I think for those that are joining, we will play off of the questions and comments because we want to broaden not only how we're being challenged to think, but we want to go and see if we can respond to some of those thoughts in the group.
And I'd just wrap up mine, Mark, by saying thank you because you were really, really instrumental in creating clarity for how could we bring value to the people in our LinkedIn community together. You kept us on target. You kept us on pace. And I know that the audience that knows you and didn't know you before now is going to be looking for yeah, and they're going to be trying to go, okay, all the New Jersey jokes aside, how do I stay on point and keep things moving? And on behalf of Wally and I just got to tell you, I appreciate that you allowed us to get that help and bring value to people today. Thanks.
I appreciate you guys, and the replay will be on the link, and look forward to having our conversation with people next month. Thanks, guys.
Everybody on the 25th of next month.
Yep. See you then.